welcome back to another episode edition of Black Guys on White Movies. I am your host, Aaron Covington.
I am your co-host, Aman Adumer.
And guest host, Bernard Harris.
And this week we're doing Interview with a Vampire to kick off a kind of themed Halloween series segment of our podcast. We might do a few,
I think so.
Creature horror type of movies, vampire things, just to get into the Halloween holiday spirit.
Spooky.
And we're starting with the Interview with a Vampire, a classic written by Anne Rice, based on a novel by Anne Rice, who wrote a series of novels about vampires, and these vampires specifically, and the history and the future, everything about them is like 10 books, and I think she's still going. The Vampire Chronicles, I think it's called overall, but Interview with the Vampire is, I think, the first one. It's the first one in the series. I don't know if it's the first one she wrote.
It's the first one in the series, and I don't think it's the first one. It's definitely not the first one chronologically, but yeah, it's the first one
Right.
he wrote and was published, I'm pretty sure.
And
she died a few years back, but like I would say even it's probably more than 10 books. Like it's a long thing.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Anne Rice passed in 2021.
Yeah.
At 80 years old.
A couple years ago. So like, but it's a long series. It also interacts into like there's a adjoining witch series. There's an adjoining werewolf series. Like she built out an entire universe for herself, and she was pretty early in the game at that whole.
Oh yeah, we're gonna talk about franchising. She was ahead of Marvel. What? And of course, the reasons why it didn't happen. Then we'll get into some of that. Let me go ahead and read the synopsis. A vampire tells his epic life story: love, betrayal, loneliness, and hunger. Yes.
That's
It
it.
doesn't really tell you what the movie is at all, but that is what the movie is.
That tells you everything I think you need to know about the movie.
Yeah. That makes it sound small, but it is such a large movie. It covers so much in so much time. ...
And hunger.
The hunger of blood. Vampires so interesting. We'll get into vampires. Let me do the Black movie of the week. We can get that here and let people know. It's called Ganja and Hess. Ganja and Hess. It's from 1973. A micro budget. Well, it says it's made for $350,000 in 73.
Okay.
So that's like micro budget, but also that's like, I don't know, $1 million now, something.
Yeah,
possibly.
That's up there now.
More.
Mm-hmm.
But when you watch it, it's like it's made for 350 now. Like this was a micro budget. Like they, so much money probably went into just buying film at that point, at that time in history.
For sure.
Right.
But it's super low budget, but it's directed by Bill Gunn, who was an indie filmmaker at the time, playwright, wrote a couple novels, just like, an artist mind and brain. And he wrote this and directed this movie, Ganja and Hess, that is really a trip. It's about a guy that's studying in like an ancient race of blood drinkers. So they never mention really vampires in the movie, but then they kind of become vampires. But it's very like I said, it's low budget, so they're not like stalking people out at night. They're just kind of coming to grips with vampirism and the hunger for blood, which is always a driving theme in vampire movies.
Mm-hmm.
The insatiable drive for more blood.
Definitely. The hunger.
The hunger. So if you are inclined, you want to know more Black cinema history, and Black movies, check out Ganja and Hess. No pressure to watch it in one sitting.
For sure. It might be a two-seater at least.
Might be a two-seater.
Mm-hmm.
But once you finish it, you'll be like, man, that was the movie was on some time. They were talking about some things. It was good and interesting. like historical piece to check out, and it keeps us in circulation.
Yeah, yeah. I'm reading here that it was picked by the Cannes Film Festival as like one of the 10 best American films of the decade in that decade. I'm assuming the 60s or 70s.
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 70s, yeah.
Wow.
So if
And
the
then
French can appreciate it, sit down and watch it.
it was remade by Spike Lee in 2014 as The Sweet Blood of Jesus. I never saw
Oh,
Spike's version. I remember hearing about it. Yeah, he did a Kickstarter to raise money for it.
oh
Uh,
man.
Yeah,
but
I
it
never
kind of came
saw it,
and
but
went in
I
a
heard
way, and
about
I never got into it. I'm gonna go maybe. Well, I remember the trailer now because Rami Malek is in it, and I remember his figure in the trailer, but I don't think I actually saw it.
Man,
But maybe I'll do that soon because now I feel like I need to.
for sure. Spike Lee's like Lil Wayne. Like you're just like, wait, I've never heard that song. He's just popping out movies that you thought you knew Spike Lee, and then it turns out he was actually featured in so many things.
It's crazy how much Spike Lee is like Lil Wayne.
Truly. They're the
People have
same.
always said, "Man, Lil Wayne, Spike Lee." Whoa, like
You've
Kobe and MJ.
never, yeah, you've never seen both of them in the same room, have you?
But that's also
Whoa,
true.
that
I
is
haven't.
true.
Maybe. Oh no, because Spike does the Knicks games, and Lil Wayne is like, I don't know. He's all over. He's on any kind of game.
Mm-hmm.
They
Lil
ever
Wayne's
been at
on.
the same Knicks game? Maybe not. Hey,
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 man, if they're
Mm.
at Knicks games, I mean, that hologram technology is real. We've all seen it.
yeah.
So
Have you
They've
seen
been
it?
using
Yeah,
body doubles all through history too. So
for sure, a
truly.
lot of people look like those two guys. They can easily hire one. So
they're both
Exactly.
short. They got to be about the same height.
Got to
So
be.
it's not that hard.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know how it
Wow.
is. Celebrity lookalikes are everywhere.
Wow.
That's
It's
an
an
easy
easy cover.
Fiverr hire. You can find that person on
100%.
Upwork.
Yeah,
We're launching a
100%.
new pod. It's Spike Lee and Lil Wayne, the same person. Each episode is 3 hours long. There's 70 episodes.
Yes.
Really get
Breaking
into
down each movie, each lyric, each rhyme,
Mm-hmm. And how they
each
all
interview
connect.
and public
Yeah.
appearance.
Mm-hmm.
a forensic investigation.
Now, to Interview with a Vampire,
Oh yeah.
let's give some brief background of this. Well, no. Actually, let's do broad thoughts first, and then let's talk about like the cast. Then we'll talk about the franchise, and then we'll talk about the movie. That sounds like a good order for things.
Yeah.
Broad thoughts. We'll start with Aman. What did you think about this movie?
Um, this movie was I went in honestly with no expectations. I had no clue what this movie was about. I kind of had maybe seen the poster of
Right.
Brad Pitt,
Hmm.
and so when I was watching it, I was genuinely surprised whenever someone popped on the screen that I recognized. Like when our boy Tom Cruise showed up, I was like, "Oh my God, they put Tom in this too!" So I was excited for the collabs of all these great people. Antonio Banderas. It was dope in that way.
Yeah.
And Kirsten Dunst. I was like, what? I know that little. Oh my! It was amazing that
True.
they put everyone in this one film. As far as like the Christian Slater, I can't not say him. Um, Subject matter and everything, I went, oh, I think this is yeah, okay, I know what kind of movie this is. It it was just a thinly veiled, I guess, like homoerotic love story, and um, I say thinly veiled. It was so thinly veiled, like it was so clear what this movie was. But I was
Mhm.
here for it. I love the costumes. Um, as far as the story, I can't even tell you what the story was. I just
Yeah. No, that's valid. And I got some
Valid.
thoughts on that. Bernard, let me get your thoughts on it.
For sure.
This was your
So
first time seeing it, right, Amon?
Yeah, first time.
But B, was this your first time seeing this?
not at all. Not at all. So I've seen it a number of times. It's a favorite of mine. Um, I've always been a big fan. I don't think I saw it in 94. I'd have been pretty young, but I also didn't see it not that long after it. Like I was in my early teens when I saw it. So um yeah, and it is exactly what you just said, Amon. It is a thinly veiled homoerotic romance story. It's interesting, like talking about the books and everything, and maybe we'll get into that deeper, but it's interesting the arc that has had from the books, which kind of portray those characters. And this is from what I know. I've only read parts of a couple. I've never made it through one of those books. They're big books, and I'm not a big book person. But they're kind of like asexual, the vampires. Like it's like sex is like a physical desire, and vampires don't have physical needs. And so, but there's clearly some sort of love story going on there. And I think that they unveiled the homoeroticism a little bit more in this movie. And then by the time you get to the recent show, which we'll mention, like that they've just stripped that off, right? And it's just a tale of two gay vampires. But yeah, I'm a big fan of the film in general. I think it. I'm a big fan of vampire movies in general. And so I think it does all of the things that a vampire movie should do, or can be well. So there's like a couple of strains of like vampire movies. There's like the romantic Dracula type, like capital R.
Sure.
There's the kind of more actiony Blade type, right? And then there's the kind of like more monstrous, like 30 Days of Night type.
Yeah. Or that
And
recent the one on the ship. What was the
oh yeah, Last Voyage of the Demeter.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Definitely.
okay.
Definitely. And I saw that, and it's a pretty solid film.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, I think at some point this movie does all of those things, right? It has the romantic kind of old worldy. It's got some pretty cool action and some great like creature effects, or like at least special effects makeup sort of stuff going on.
Yeah. And for the time, of course.
And for the time, and I think a lot of that stuff really holds up. I feel like a lot of those effects that are in this movie still hold up pretty strong.
I think the way they shot it
Yeah.
was allow that too,
Mhm.
back in the era of letting people's imagination work. They didn't show everything. They could cut away and be like, what's happening.
Right.
They
It
could just hint
definitely
at it.
it employs that like hinting very well. So, anyways, long story short is I really enjoyed it, and it's always interesting to watch again because I don't know, it gives me something a little bit more to like appreciate about what it's doing as a film.
For sure. For me, I enjoyed it. And when I about halfway through, I was like, you know what this is? It's a vampire movie, and I had not seen it before, so I guess I thought it was more of like, and they're going to be in a romantic genre of vampire, like they wanted to get into high society, so they were trying to infiltrate and maybe destroy some people and sucking blood and doing the dancing and everything. But there's elements of that, and that's not what this movie is. This movie is an interview with the vampire. It's a biopic of this vampire. This has the same format of the modern day, the last 30 years of a biopic. Even at the same time, this came out the same year as, let me look this up, as Forrest Gump.
Oh, wow.
Seems like it.
Same year as Forrest Gump. And it's basically the same format.
Yeah.
If you replace the reporter with the park bench,
Wow.
and he's just telling his story to somebody, and Forrest is just telling his story to different people.
Wow.
And we go through time, it's the same thing. And even in the interview, they hint at a certain connection to historical things in different ways. Not to the level of Forrest Gump, but I'm not really trying to align these two movies. I'm really trying to align these fictional biopics as its own genre.
Yeah.
Right.
that Brad Pitt would later do again with Benjamin Button was basically a fictional biopic,
Right.
if you think about it. But his life goes in reverse. So it's even like plays on the trope. So anyway, I thought that was really interesting. And that puts it in a different framework because then you don't expect it to be a horror movie. And I think when you say it's a vampire, you kind of initially expect like horrific aspects. And it's has them, but it's not constant. You're not on the edge of your seat, like, oh man, what the vampire's gonna come, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And we don't follow anybody who's not a vampire for any significant time. So there's no like, are they gonna get turned or not, you know?
Right. Right.
Which is interesting. So it puts it in its own category in the vampire realm. I think this fictional biopic is a valid movie genre that really could be utilized more because it can be really funny, like the Dewey Cox Walk Hard or
Mm-hmm. Walk
whatever.
hard. Yep.
Yeah.
You know, even I think like some of the Will Ferrell movies, like Ricky Bobby. What was that? The Ricky Bobby movie. That's like a
Yeah.
fictional biopic that is a comedy. Anyway, to get off of that, and I really got
Yeah.
stuck on the cast. Obviously, such great casting,
Truly. Mm-hmm.
and I was, telling my partner, I was like, I think this is the only movie Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise have done together. What a shame. What an
Yeah.
absolute
Yeah.
shame. I'm like, look, I don't know why Tom Cruise wasn't the villain in Ocean's 13. I mean, Pacino was
Oh.
fine, but they should have reunited these two
They
in
really
Ocean's
need to.
13. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why Brad Pitt can't be like a two-scene ally or the villain in a Mission Impossible movie. Like, why is this not happening? Reunite these two. Let's go.
Mm-hmm.
This is the biggest mistake. One of our legends not working together more,
Yeah.
and we'll get into this with casting too, with Black legends, is a travesty, an absolute travesty.
Yeah. Yeah.
LeBron teamed up with Dwayne Wade. KD teamed up with Steph. Come on, man. Jordan had Pippen. Like for movies to have everybody's got to do their
Mm-hmm.
own thing. No, team up. This is what we want to see. And also,
Mm-hmm.
father and sons. Denzel and John David do a movie together. What are we talking about? It's not
Right.
that hard. That's what everybody wants to see it. Have Tom and Colin have they never done a movie together? What are you two doing? Don't make me
Right.
come over there.
Right.
Oh, man. I agree 100%. And when they do movies together, you're like, whoa. For example, when DiCaprio and Brad Pitt did Once Upon a Time in Hollywood,
Yeah.
you're like,
Everybody
oh,
loved it.
everybody loved it. And Tarantino's whole thing was like, yeah, it's like playing toys where you're like, oh, I want my best toy from this and the best toy for let's put them up against each other or put them together. And it's like, yeah, we all want that. We all want to see these legends go. And
It's guaranteed.
Definitely.
Like they say, how do we get ticket sales? Well, put some legends together, man.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Put them together.
It's interesting. It's like the real world version of what's happening in like all the movies, right? Like it's like,
Right.
oh, hey, that character from the 90s that you loved, then now they're back. Dr. Sam from Jurassic Park is back in the new Jurassic World. Like
Mm-hmm.
they're doing all that.
Right.
It's like, no, do that in real life too. We want to
Mm-hmm.
I do agree. It is a travesty that Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt have never worked together, man. Like the chemistry's on fire in this.
Chemistry's
Right.
on fire. They're
On
on fire. What was that?
I think that dog.
Oh yeah, dogs chomping. It just kind of it unnerved me for a second. But speaking about the cast, we're going to the cast real quick. So Tom Cruise, at this point in his career, um, let me look up his filmography. But he'd already done. I mean, look, Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt were already stars at this point,
Definitely.
And Cruise had come off of The Firm and A Few Good Men. Few Good Men, Legend, with legendary movie like Demi Moore and Jack Nicholson, to name a couple.
For sure. Firm was
Obviously,
a
he had already
huge
done
hit,
like
too.
Top Gun and Days of Thunder and stuff. So this was a big movie for him, I think, because he wasn't the lead and he was kind of off character.
Yeah.
Right.
And it was maybe his first movie really playing a character and not just kind of being young Tom Cruise.
Yeah. Yeah. I noticed that.
There's a movie, I can't remember if it's before or after this, where he's like an Irish immigrant in like 1800s New York.
Oh
Far
wow.
and Away?
Yeah, Far and
No,
Away. I think
maybe.
so.
Yeah, Ireland, but it's 1980s. It says, or maybe it flashes back. I don't know.
Okay, but yeah,
I'm just looking at it. I'm
there's
just looking at the
very few.
filmography, just picking and choosing. Yeah, I don't really know.
There's very few where he's not, yes, kind of a young, brash Tom Cruise type.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Truly.
And right after this, he did Mission Impossible and Jerry Maguire, which was full cruise, both of those
Mm.
intensely.
Mm-hmm.
And he's intense in this one, but he's a character. He's like this restrained intensity for most of it. And
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
He does a
really
great job in this one of uh being like likable but villainous. But then you realize he's not villainous. Like it's like a whole shift throughout. Um yeah.
totally.
I think he probably, if I had to guess, he probably was like, I'm not sitting in that makeup chair anymore. Like I'm not gonna sit there for 5 hours. You know, they had to sit there for a long time, get those contacts, get that face, everything.
The
Well,
later scenes where he's like really kind of monstrous. I mean, that was probably back then like a 12-hour sit or something like that.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely. 12 hours, no iPhone. Come on. Crazy.
Well, Cruise and Pitt have an interesting career because Cruise was always like, just going through his filmography. It's like I'm the star. I'm trying to be a movie star.
Mm-hmm.
We know how much he loves old Hollywood. Like he was like, I'm in that category of legendary movie stars. I'm the lead, doing the things. And in this one, he's not the lead, so that's very interesting. Brad Pitt kind of did the thing where he was like, which is very more maybe more modern, where it's like, yeah, I'm a movie star. Everybody tells me I'm good looking, but I want my bona fides. I want to kind of get the cred, the little street cred or the acting cred. Like, so he did a lot of movies, especially in this period in the mid '90s that were like not movie star movies necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Um, and this movie in particular reminds me of the Brad Pitt like observer Brad Pitt that I'll call it. That he was also in like Meet Joe Black and 7 Years in Tibet. This kind of
Mhm.
recurring Brad Pitt thing where he's like in a situation and observing it, like watching other people, which he did a lot in this movie. Meet Joe Black, he
Mhm.
was like death personified, watching people live and like commenting. 7 Years into Bed, he was kind of doing a similar thing. It was different, but it was a similar thing where he's like traveling to other worlds and he's like just standing there with his glassy eyes, like, huh, what is this contemplative Brad Pitt, you might
Mhm.
say, even.
Yeah, I've never really seen that so specifically named, at least for myself before. Yeah, but there's definitely like a heavy level of like introspectiveness to like a lot of Brad Pitt characters.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I've heard him
Well,
described as a character actor in a leading man's body, where he's like you're saying, Aaron, he was not doing those leading man parts. He was doing like those, I'm gaining my stripes, I'm working. Um,
and it does
yeah.
make me wonder how he saw himself. It's very
Mhm.
interesting. And a movie like Seven, he wasn't the lead in, but he
Mhm.
was definitely a draw in it. But then he does like 12 Monkeys, which is just crazy kind of, 90s sci-fi, you
Again,
know.
the lead.
And he does movies like
Yeah.
Cool World where it's like half animated and he's animated.
Legends of the
He does
Fall,
like Fight
very
Club and
Western.
Snatch, which he's like he stars in those, but it's not like, and they're kind of ensemble,
Hmm. Yeah. Especially
very
Snatch.
interesting
Yeah.
career. Very interesting career.
For sure.
Not always like trying to be the star, but his reputation, his life in the tabloids,
Hmm.
his looks kind of
Yeah.
preceded him. There might have been other things
Yes.
he wanted to do, but they were like, "You're Brad Pitt, man. You got to do these Ocean's movies and Mr. and Mrs. Smith. We got to get you back.
Hmm. Hmm.
You can't. You're not Paul Giamatti, my guy. You can't do that. You can't do the Philip Seymour. That's not where we're putting you, my dude.
Right.
It's funny though, even those two movies that you just mentioned, those are very much shared, movies, right? Like the Ocean's
For
movies,
sure.
he's not the main guy, Mr. and Mrs. Smith is a classic two-hander.
Classic two-hander. Classic two-hander. I don't know that he's done a movie where he's the only guy.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Moneyball?
Ma-
Is that the main one? I mean,
I don't know.
where
Yeah.
he's like clearly the lead and nobody, like, everybody else is
I mean,
following him.
Jonah
Jonah Hill.
Hill. I mean, he's like a strong supporter in that movie, but like, yeah, it's
Strong
probably
supporter, but not.
yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow, yeah,
Brad
Yeah.
Pitt, the ultimate collaborator.
crazy.
Truly. Truly.
Truly. And then we don't have to get to the other cast as much because this wasn't, I mean, this was obviously big for Kirsten Dunst
Yeah,
at 12 or 13 doing a movie with these two and having such a significant part. Definitely blew up her career, Antonio Banderas, this is a good movie for him. Christian Slater, it's a good movie for him, but it's not, they were only in parts of the movie, really, 10, 20 minutes, whatever it was. This is really all about Cruise and Pitt.
Yeah.
for sure.
And then Anne Rice. We'll briefly talk about kind of, okay, so this movie did well. $60 million budget, made $224 million box office.
Ooh.
That's pretty good.
So then whoever owns the rights says, okay, let's do another one. But let's do it without Anne Rice. Let's base it on a book, but just basically the title of the book and completely tell a new story. And this movie was the Queen of the Damned.
Right.
But they didn't follow the book. It wasn't even the next story that Anne would have wanted to told. So, and that movie did poorly. That movie did very poorly. And then there wasn't another movie based on her books until the TV show, I think last year when that came out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's just so much mismanagement here. There's so much missed opportunity there. Like, why when this movie does well is the impetus to do something completely different for the next one.
Yeah.
And in the middle of this writer's strike that we're in, historic writer's strike, it makes me wonder, like, why are writers the enemy so often in the minds of studios and executives? It doesn't make sense, any logical or business sense, to go away from what works. And I said this to friends like in the industry for a while. It's like, it's not money that drives the industry, it's power. And somebody decided that they wanted more power over this than Anne Rice. That they wanted the credit for doing a good vampire movie.
Yes.
More than they wanted to make money for doing a good vampire series. I mean, this could have predated almost all the franchises we have now. And it was right when they were doing the Star Wars prequel. Like I said, this movie almost quadrupled its budget just at the box office, not including home sales and stuff later. If they do the next book next, even if they have to use new actors, like, I'm pretty sure she had a huge following. She had proven that she knew something about what the audience wanted. She'd already proven it in the books. And they said, nah, we want to do something different. We'll make it more actiony and stuff. Why do you want to change something that worked? It's infuriating.
That's really interesting, especially when you consider, like, so the first book, the book comes out in 76, right? So like by the time you get to 93 would have been when they were making the movie, right? Comes out in 94. I mean, she's got a 20-year following, 20-year career. And this is back when, I mean, she was making money. She was making money at a hit level that just isn't approachable in print publishing anymore, right? Like, this is a much bigger, reading books is a much bigger thing back then before all these other media forms existed. So it's like, like huge following. And that is a real interesting question. Why would you choose to move away from that?
Yeah. It's so strange. It feels like everything you said so far about like the ego of going, yeah, it says it's based on her book, but I know best. I know what's going to make this easier.
Yeah.
And in that follow up, did they have either Tom Cruise or Brad Pitt?
No, they weren't going to be in it either way, whether they
Right.
had done it her way or another way, which I think is also fine.
Yeah,
Could have been fine because The Cell was just an Anne Rice book. You know what I mean?
exactly. Yeah, you wouldn't do the first Harry Potter movie and then go, I got a better idea for the second Harry Potter movie. Goodbye,
Yeah,
J.K. Rowling. Goodbye,
yeah,
source material.
For
yeah.
Let's
We're
sure.
get
just gonna use the
some.
title of the book and vaguely make it about wizards, but we're
Mm-hmm.
gonna,
And,
mess it up.
and the
Yeah.
interesting thing about her series, The Vampire Chronicles, is it's not just about these two characters. Like there's a book about the Antonio Banderas character,
Right.
and many others. So they wouldn't have necessarily been confined to just having Brad and Tom. You know what I mean? They really could have done
Mm-hmm.
something huge for sure.
It would have been the MCU before the MCU.
Mm-hmm.
They'd
Would have
have
been
had
great.
the Louis Leon Core movie. Then they would have had, you know, the Captain America Lestat movie. Then they would have had
Yeah.
the Armand
Could you
Wow.
Black Panther. I don't know. Then
That's
they would
true.
have brought them all together for the Vampire Avengers.
Mm.
Oh God, if only. It's also interesting, just to since we're talking about the books and that whole thing, like and Anne Rice, like it's very interesting. Like coming out in '76, like this is in a lot of ways foundational to a lot of the vampire stuff we see now. Like
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
heavy dose of this in Twilight, heavy dose of this in Twilight.
Mm.
Like even the vampires in Twilight, which I've never seen, but I've heard like sparkling in the sun, like that
Mm-hmm.
is from a later one of her books that I did get like about halfway through. So it's like there's so many different like vampire things. The True Blood, like the fact that
Yeah.
takes place in Louisiana, like
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
there's she's so foundational to so many of the things that are themselves big post signs in this like corner of fiction that
Yeah.
it's pretty incredible to like think about this woman's impact.
Truly. And having not seen this movie, I watched What We Do in the Shadows. And
Yeah. Also an
then
interview with a vampire, right?
yeah, 100%. And then watching that show, which is using all the tropes and things from all these vampire movies, I was able to watch this movie and go, oh, the way they torture vampires is put them in the tunnel with the grated ceiling as the sun is about to come up. They did that in What We Do in the Shadows. Oh, actually,
Right.
they took it from Interview with the Vampire, um,
Right. You're like,
where you're like, I've seen
it
this
all ties
already.
in. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah, no, they took this from this. But no,
Yeah. You
100%.
can't
This,
you can't be doing a modern vampire thing and not read some Anne Rice or know about Anne Rice or do some research.
mm-hmm.
She put
Definitely.
herself in that category. To close that out, I just want to say writers are not the enemy. We're trying to make a buck. We're trying to make an impact.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we writers want to collaborate, especially in this industry where that it has to be made by somebody else in some way. There's an actor, a producer, maybe a different director, all these other people. But with how the strike is going and looking at this franchise where it's just like push the writer out. It's like, so to what end, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
You get new writers, they're not going to be less difficult than the first writer because everybody's trying to get their words on the page. It's going to be the same problem. So then they're like AI to replace writers. We'll get into that with another movie another time. But that's not going to solve your problems.
No.
So, you know, don't make writers your villains in the story of you making a movie.
Right.
So
Right.
then 20 years later, the rights revert back to her and her estate. So they make a show titled Interview with the Vampire. And we also watched the pilot of that. And that was really good. And we'll talk about that as we talk about like the movie itself, which we'll
Mm-hmm.
do right now. I think let's get into
Let's do it. Let's get into it.
this actual movie.
Man, what
Uh,
was that? song you had a couple of weeks ago, that'd have been a great transition moment.
But that was for
Oh, black casting.
the black cast.
This is black cast. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
This is the movie.
Plot time, plot time.
Louis
I'm sorry I brought this up.
Louis de Pont du Lac,
Mhm.
Love that
somehow
pronunciation.
reaches out to this reporter and is like, I want to tell my life story. Which is a crazy premise. It's just out of nowhere.
Mhm.
But you ride with it because, you know, everybody has a confessional. This is, you know, everybody in their life has confessional moments or has a need. That's why people write memoirs all the time and, you know, do these interviews where it's like, tell your story. So he's telling his story. And we find out that he was a slave owner in Louisiana. The first time, but not the last time Brad Pitt would play a slave owner. He was also in 12 Years a Slave.
Oh
Very true.
yeah, yeah.
But kind of like a troubled slave owner. So he's like still a good guy, quote unquote, as much as a slave owner can be, I guess.
Also a Brad Pitt produced movie.
Also a Brad Pitt produced movie.
Interesting.
Mhm.
But his wife dies and he's despondent, right? Basically. He basically has a death wish. He's like a drunkard. He's like, he doesn't want to live anymore. He's going through the motions and daring people to shoot him at card games. Lestat, played by Tom Cruise, sees him and decides like this is gonna be who he feeds on, but also has like we come to find out later is like has a real interest in him, which is this like longing or lust that may or may not be sexual, as Bernard was saying earlier. Hunts him down and changes him into a vampire in the classic way you would expect. Bites him, then makes him drink Lestat makes Brad Pitt drink his Lestat's blood, basically, so that he would wake up and be, you know, the undead, a vampire. And these two would form a relationship from that.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about that?
They
so
become
far?
companions as opposed to just I'm hungry and that's it.
Yeah. So, you know, when I saw this movie for the first time, it was interesting because I think we're so often that like era. I think it's like 1790 or something like that when he's turned.
Yeah,
Somewhere around there. I think that era, you know, we were always kind of taught this like very clean version of it, like, you know, the revolution and all this stuff like that. And I remember, you know, seeing this for the first time, and it struck me again this time is like it's kind of one of the first times I really remember seeing like this era of America, and it's like depicted like in America I recognize, right? Like there's a shitty bar, there's like card games happening, like guns are getting pulled on people, like like people are living life, right? It's not just a bunch of like people dancing in a circle at like some fancy ball or something like that.
that's funny. Yeah,
And
Yeah.
so I do think it's a really interesting thing that this movie sets up, that this guy's really got a death wish. He's out there playing in the bad neighborhoods of 1790s New Orleans.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I definitely thought I was like, okay, because of what I thought about the movie going in, and I was like, it hadn't hit me yet how much of an allegory for homosexuality this was yet, you know?
Mm.
And so he changed them, and then they're just like, it was so much about Louis not being comfortable killing people
Mm-hmm.
and taking their blood early on. Like that was not something he wanted to do, felt comfortable with, and it was just Lestat constantly being like, "This is what we do. You have to do this to survive. It's also fun. Stop denying yourself this like pleasure."
Mm-hmm.
To the point where Louis is like, "Oh, we can eat animal blood, and then I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna eat rats and pigeons." I'm not killing humans, bro. I'm just not gonna do it.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
And the animal blood is disgusting. Like
Yeah,
it's not
he's
the
living
same.
a half-life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Embracing who he is. Interesting.
But I wonder what that part is saying. Is it kind of like he wasn't ready to come out of the closet, so to speak? Is that what that was? Or was that just directly like a commentary on, I don't know, humanity?
I think there's a little bit of all of that in there. I definitely think like so the director of this Neil Jordan, like I know he's did movies like, The Crying Game. Like
Mm,
so he's kind of playing in that space of like queer film, or at least, I don't really know anything about his personal life or who he is beyond. I don't know his biography, but
right.
at least in that space, in that time period. So I kind of feel like definitely that was intended in this movie. And like we said, kind of mentioned before, like the new show certainly makes that kind of more one-to-one connection, that those two things are a metaphor,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
Oh, for
it is really
sure.
it is really interesting to think about what that is saying about both being human and, potentially being queer, being gay.
Yeah, because in the new show, they even mentioned early on that he's like, they hint at people, at him knowing that he's gay and that people may be suspecting that he's gay.
Yeah.
Right.
And in the show, when the Lestat takes an interest of him, he mentions he's like, how intrigued he was by the man. That lets you know that he's sexually attracted to him, you know,
Yeah, like
in a
it's
way that
only in the show, which takes place not in the 1790s but in 1910s. They do a lot of changing and
early,
updating.
yeah,
But yeah, it's only encoded so much as like it would have had to have been in society at the time. Like
yeah,
he's being pretty
Mm-hmm.
bold.
Yeah.
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 He's, the way he's living is kind of like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
this is a dandy, you know.
Yeah, for sure. Like he's living out loud for sure, as what you could do in 1910.
But the biggest plot point comes shortly later. I mean, he has to burn down his plantation because, well, one, the slaves are like, don't like Lestat, and they're, about to revolt because Lestat is gross. They're like, why are people coming in? They see the dead pigeons that Louis is leaving, and they're like, there's some evil here. They know, and it is interesting, Black people used as like a mascot in America again, in a way, or just like a plot point. It's like, oh, the slaves can tell there's an evil here, and then Sandy Newton is his maid, and she's like, it's not looking good for you right now. You got to get rid of this other dude. We got to go back to normal.
Mm-hmm.
Then he
Mm-hmm.
bites her, and we don't see her again. But shout out to Sandy Newton
I
with one of
know.
her early roles.
Yeah.
Sure.
Another surprise casting there. So he burns it down, and then it's him on the start. They kind of can't break each other. Broke back, I can't get rid of you.
I can't
Mm-hmm.
quit you.
But Louis runs into this little girl who's crying on her like her mom is dead, dead. Like when they show the body, it's like, oh man, she been dead for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
And he bites her. He needs blood, man. He needs a human blood at this point. He was desperate. He bites her. Lestat comes in and sees like that there's something more here. He's like, oh, he had feelings for this girl. I can tell. He changes her, the girl. This is the Kirsten Dunst, the 12-year-old girl.
Mm-hmm.
Changes her into a vampire. Now, right then, I was a little concerned. I was a little concerned. I was like, man, what? Okay, what is this? But then shortly after, within a couple minutes, I was like, oh, this isn't like a creepy, pervy thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I knew, like, oh, these are two gay men that adopted a daughter.
Yeah.
For
This is
sure.
a found family.
And the more that Lestat tried to train her in vampire ways and dress her up as a doll, I was like, oh, that's definitely an archetype of a kind of gay man at a time that might do this kind of thing. Have a little daughter and really like dress her up in dolls and try to make her some ideal that he had, because obviously Lestat was not a well man or a well vampire mentally at the time. So
Right.
it's an extreme version of things, not like this is what gay men do. It's like, no, this is what this kind of unwell person would do,
Right.
And that's really when it clued in for me that this was, because also Brad Pitt's character Louis was so affectionate to her in like a nurturing way. Like he really loved her, and it was like a parent-child relationship.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's even a part where I don't know if Lestat calls Louis mother, right? When talking to Claudia, but he definitely, when she says, like, I think there's a point she says, "Where's my mommy?" Like he looks
Yeah.
very meaningfully at like Louis. And it's definitely like, I don't think, even Anne Rice was trying to hide the fact that it's definitely that like, daddy got mommy pregnant so that mommy can't leave sort of situation, right? Like that's what's happening here. Like he had to
right.
get a baby to hang on to Louis, because Louis at that point, like, this might be even some time after the slave revolt on his plantation. But some time has gone by even since then. So he's kind of like fed up with this shit. Like he's really ready to leave, but to jump back to that thing with the slave revolt, I think that is interesting. I do think it is a mascot that is portrayed in this film, probably by some people who maybe not have the full knowledge to really engage with it. But I do think it's interesting in the sense that, like, I have a sense, and I think, if you really dig into the history, which I've only done a little bit, right, in podcasts and things of this nature, but like, there seems to be a history in this country of a lot more quote unquote slave revolts than are talked about, right? That
Oh, totally.
you get situations like this all the time. And even some of the laws that are put to like curb, plantation revolts in some of these states let you know that this was happening. So I always think that is interesting, that maybe that's not the filmmaker's intent, but I think this is a testament to the fact that, like, in some ways we get these pictures that are portrayed in films as if slave masters were just out here doing whatever. Yes, it was a brutally unfair imbalance of power that came with a lot of brutality, especially as you get closer and closer towards the Civil War. It becomes really bad in ways that maybe it was, at least around this time, less intentionally harsh, more commercial in nature. But the point being is that at the same time, Black people were never content with that station. And when given an opportunity, like, people did revolt, plantations did get burnt, people did get killed. And the people who wrote that history maybe don't always want us to like connect with that part of our history as well.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the biggest misconceptions about that time. I think that it infiltrated society and really makes people cast certain aspersions, especially on their own ancestors, that slaves were complicit or happy or, just going about their day at the time. No, no, no. The hold that slavery had was pretty tenuous the entire time. But society functioned and people lived in the way that it was at the time, but it was not just like, oh, wake up and do the work, and if your count is off, you get whipped. No, it was contentious, it was rebellious. One of the many reasons why it also had to end, why slavery just cannot last. Like, so when you put it like that and thinking about that in this movie is like way more important than it might seem at first glance.
Yeah, 100%. And I really love the point you made about the laws and the intensity in which like these rebellions were shut down and people were punished
Yeah,
has to indicate that it was happening a
right.
lot and they were attempting to fight people's natural instinct to be free and to feel some sense of fairness with just pure brutality, like you mentioned.
Because you got to understand, why would slave catcher be a job
Right.
if it wasn't a constant problem? Anybody could do it if it was just one or two people occasionally going. If
Right.
it was only the Underground Railroad, no, it became a job that became a police force, basically, that
Mm-hmm.
evolved to modern policing
Right.
because it was constant. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I was having
So,
a conversation just real quickly. I was having a conversation with my sibling a couple weeks ago where we were talking about, we also have a Caribbean side to our family, and in the Caribbean, and even in like places in South America, usually where I think there's more jungle, you have these like histories of like this was a town that was founded by runaway slaves, escaped slaves, and it's
Mm-hmm.
been black for generations. But
yeah,
what we don't really have that in this country. It's not preserved because what would happen a lot of times is like people would run away and they wouldn't run north to Canada. They run west because the country only went so far west. But
Mm-hmm.
mhm,
as the country continued to expand west, these, former enslaved settlements, towns, villages were eventually, covered
Mm-hmm.
over by development, right? So
right.
we don't really have that history of what it was for those of our people who did not who got away, who
Yeah.
resisted up to the very end. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
100%.
that's true.
Anyways,
And that's mentioned in the connecting it back to the pilot of the show.
right.
It's mentioned having the main character be black, and was it Lestat, the initial vampire?
Yes, Lestat.
Lestat being like, yeah, things are unfair for you, the
Yeah.
way
Right.
He
people
says it,
treat you.
says it a bunch of times, really, like, or at least intimate, brings it out that, like, how do you live like this? You got to sublimate yourself, for
Hmm.
these people.
Yeah, there's so
Definitely.
much.
Um,
I think, just as we're talking about slavery and then we talked about the new show, I really think there's an interesting parallel because in the new show, like he plays like a pimp, right? Like they mentioned that his family was Creole, that they had some land and that eventually like it was taken away.
Louis' character, the main character.
Louis, yeah, the main
Yeah.
character, Louis' character, and
Hmm.
eventually it was taken away through Jim Crow laws in the South, right?
Hmm.
And that he's been forced to kind of the classic, hip hop story, right? I had no other option, so I had to go make it on the street. And so he's a pimp in
Right.
like the like I don't know whatever the French Quarter or whatever,
Yeah.
and it's interesting because there is I think a very real parallel to the sort of vampirism and parasitic nature of Louis being a slaveholder who's turned into a vampire to Louis in the new show being a pimp who feeds on other people for his money, who's
Hmm.
then later turned into a vampire. Like in both cases, he's trying to live a life in which he doesn't want to admit what he already is, and becoming a vampire just kind of makes the metaphor real.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It's deep, y'all.
That's
It's
deep. That's
deep.
deep.
uh, so yeah, they raised this girl, Claudia. Well, they don't raise her because she can't age. So like years go by,
Yeah.
she's getting smarter. She understands like what's going on, and she starts to withdraw from Lestat, especially. But her and Louis, Brad Pitt's character, have this like strong love and attachment, and he's like, "I want what's best for you. I want you to be free." So they basically turn on Lestat. She
Hmm.
conspires. She, kills him or burns him. They dump him in the ocean, and then they try to get away. And then they travel. They travel the world. They get on a boat. They go to England, Europe, Italy, Paris. They're all over the world partially in search of other vampires. Because Louis' kind of whole thing is, what is the meaning of this, and what is the meaning of life, and who am I, and what is there's a lot of
Hmm.
questions. This is a philosophical pit, so he's asking all the hard questions.
Right.
Hmm.
Eventually, they run into these vampires. And it also brings an interesting thing because they mentioned America being a new world. They find Antonio Banderas, who's like the leader, quote unquote, kind of like a de facto leader of these vampires, and they're all kind of stuck in this old world debauchery that's been around for centuries.
Mm-hmm.
Where Louis is like not like, these people are just kind of killing freely, sex freely, you know, in this gothic manner. And Louis is not. That's not how he wants to live.
Mm-hmm.
So he kind of clashes with them. But Claudia meets an older lady who's a human. She's like, I want this. I'm a young girl. I'm gonna be a young girl forever. I want I want a woman. I want a mother, like an actual female figure.
Mm-hmm.
So he turns this lady. So it kind of everything happens kind of quickly here, where like the biggest sin a vampire can commit is killing other vampires. Well, they killed Lestat, and Armand pretty much knows this because he knows Lestat was in America. He figures it out. At the same time, Louis transforms this lady into a vampire for Claudia out of his love for Claudia because that's what she wants. The other vampires conspire to kill Louis, the girl,
Mm-hmm.
and the new mother. They kill the girl and the new mother by putting him in the dungeon. The son turns him into ash.
Mm-hmm.
They put Louis in a coffin as like a form of eternal torture. That's how they're gonna pay him back for killing another vampire. Armand basically breaks Louis out because he has a similar attachment to Louis that Louis and Lestat had. Like they're kindred spirits. There's a love there, an instant love at first sight kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
These two male vampires. So he breaks them out. But Louis is like, man, you killed the only girl I love. I can't stand for that. So this is one of the action set pieces. He sets their whole place on fire during the day and has this big Skype, and just like when they try to break free, he slashes them. That's some good action right there.
One of my
Mm-hmm.
favorite scenes.
Get
for
his
sure.
revenge. Now he's on his own. He's on his own. He returns to America eventually. He kind of has a calling to go back to Louisiana. Encounters Lestat again, who's like still all burnt up,
Mm-hmm.
but he's still alive, living in their old house. That's pretty
Heartbroken
much,
PTSD.
yeah.
Like,
It's complete.
he's messed up.
That's pretty much how it comes together before the actual interview itself
Yeah.
lines up.
Yeah. Yeah. Within all of those, this whole kind of last act, I did notice all of the reference points for other movies and TV shows. Like when they were at that kind of gothic manor where they were doing the theater and the stripping the person and taking their blood, and then all of them feeding on them like rats and things. I immediately thought of that Key and Peele sketch where they're in the sort of vampire gothic manner and everyone's kind of moving funny and dressed like all, and then Keegan, who's like the latest vampire there, has regular clothes on, and it's just like, why are y'all doing this? Like, why? just suck the thing. Like, just make it easy. Like, this is crazy. It doesn't need to be all sexual like this. I immediately thought,
I've never seen that one.
oh, you haven't seen it?
No,
Oh,
that's
it's so
hilarious. I gotta
funny.
check that out.
It's so funny. So I was thinking about all that, and then the Kirsten Dunst not being able to turn the older woman into a vampire because she's not strong enough.
Yeah.
I feel like it's such a smart little allegory for, well, one, why you shouldn't turn kids, because they're going to want company and they're going to want to turn other people without thinking of the consequences.
Yeah.
And that same deal of like, well, if this is what my kid wants, then I'm going to do it. And being burned for it. Lestat hasn't lived his own life.
It's very interesting to think about, and I'm sure, I think she's talked about it, Kirsten Dunst. I mean, they ask a lot of a preteen girl to try to, really approach and act out as an actress in this stuff. But
she had a tough job, man.
She had a tough job. But I mean, she does such a good job in this performance, as Brad Pitt does, of really like portraying like this very complex father-daughter relationship that's also like a sibling relationship, and it's very complex, and there's all sorts of levels to their just relationship, even being these sole vampires that they think in the world, you know what I mean? And so really incredible stuff with that, and like the idea that I mean, the scene where she kills Lestat is incredible, right? Like, you still dress me like a girl or you're like a doll. Like,
Yeah.
it's been 30 years. Like, you know what I mean? I'm a grown woman.
Mhm.
And it's incredible. But I also really love a lot of those scenes of her and Lestat when things are still good and they're both like just happily killing everything in sight. And
Yeah, that's just a fun and game. Like it was, you know,
that's
delivering
what
on the promise of vampires.
for
Mhm.
sure. And that's what I kind of mean about, like, this movie does all of the things, including the horror and the monster aspect too. Because even though these folks don't have like big bat noses or whatever, like, they are monsters. They
Yeah.
happily kill children and families and whatever. And so it's just really well done. I will
Mhm.
also say, I mean, 1994 Brad Pitt, 1994 Tom Cruise, 1994 Antonio Banderas. I mean, come on, you got like the three just
Mhm.
sexiest guys in the game. Like, there's no
Hey,
way this
give the
movie's not
people what
making
they want. Give the people
200
what they
mil.
want. Yeah.
You know
Mhm.
what I mean?
They all had
Mhm.
like crazy long hair just
Crazy
flowing
long
back.
hair. Hey, come
This
Truly.
was
on.
the age of Fabio. Remember
Yeah.
Fabio?
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah,
That
Where
yeah.
it was like the romance novel covered novels, and he had the long hair, and that was like the image of like beautiful man,
oh,
a
for sure.
Mhm.
beautiful man. And these guys, they were all beautiful men in this movie by that
Truly.
standard.
Long hair
Um,
Pitt era is a different Brad Pitt.
there was an interesting line in this movie too, very interesting line, because Louis won't drink blood, and Lestat is like, evil is a point of view.
Mm.
I was like, yo,
Mhm.
evil is a point of view.
Hmm.
Because he's like, we got to eat. This is how we survive. We don't do this, we died. How is it? It's no,
Yeah.
it's a point of view. That was
That's
cold.
Man, that was great. I also loved their take on hell, where Brad Pitt's character just keeps going, I want to like go to hell. Like
Yeah,
I gotta die and go whatever. And then Lestat's just like, well, yeah, but I don't know any hell. I've been alive forever. Like there's no such, I don't know if that hell exists or if they want to even have you.
Right.
Like I was
yeah,
like, oh, that's a dope take on this sort of trope of a vampire's evil, therefore they all are damned to
yeah.
hell.
It's all psychological. He's like, it's all psychological.
Right.
You're being held back by things you've
Mhm.
been told by people you don't know.
Right.
But I've
Yes.
been alive for 100 years, and I'm telling you,
Right.
this is the actual real life experience. This is what I've experienced. There's also something interesting in this movie about white people reveling in violence against each other,
Mm.
personified by Lestat, but also when they go to Europe, there's a disconnect there between Europeans and Americans, European white people and American white people. But I
Mm.
think this movie shows that does exist, where that's an excuse for Americans to look kind of down on Europeans, but at the same time, using the same behaviors, Europeans look down on Americans.
Mm.
There's like the Puritan aspect of Pitt that's like, I won't do this, I won't revel in this,
Mm.
that
Mhm.
Europeans might look down on and like, man, life, have fun. This is life. Like, let's
Mhm.
do it. Like,
Mhm.
what are you being so stuck up for?
Mhm.
But at the same time, that kind of revelry, the Puritan American mindset looks down on and says, you have to be composed and for higher society. Yeah, 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 yeah. So like the same behaviors, both sides look down on each other for with a different set of values,
Mhm.
partially because Americans came from that and are like there's this thing, there's this distinction, which is interesting because this movie being written by Anne Rice and basically about an allegory for gay men is like different from a lot of movies we do where it's commenting on the tropes that white people put into society. rather than just kind of mindless, like unconsciously displaying them.
Mhm.
She's aware of them as a woman who's had to fight against these things,
Mm.
Right.
or at least the male dominated patriarchy of it. Maybe not the whiteness is she commenting on so much, but definitely like the maleness of it, you know?
Mm.
Hmm. Yeah, and what I learned is that she has a gay son, and
Mm.
so who's also a writer.
Mm.
So to come from that point of view of raising my son in this world and knowing like knowing what he's going to have to face, especially in those early days, um, I think that adds to it as well.
Yeah.
Worth checking out. I'm gonna look up the son and some of his books. I mean,
I know
just
if
growing up in
it's
that household, he has to have some like an
Mhm.
interesting. His brain must work in an interesting way, you know.
if it's
Yeah.
the same son, I know that there's been like a son of hers that has written some of her later books with her when she was kind of, going down and
Mhm.
out. So I wonder if it's that same
See.
one.
Oh, I
Yeah, same
bet.
one, and he's done a bunch on his own.
Oh, cool.
Interesting.
Mm.
Well, we've been here about an hour. Anything else? I mean, this movie does have a lot to get into. I mean,
Mhm.
we may not we're not going to get to everything, but does anything else that really stuck out before we get into casting,
Um,
which is going to be maybe its own kind of thing, but
I just, I would say one thing that I do a scene. It's a short scene, but like pretty much everything after Louis destroys that like French vampire coven thing,
yeah,
uh, moves at a pretty brisk pace, right? He's like, basically the next 150 years went like this. But
yeah,
like that sequence of him getting a chance to see sunrises again through movies, and they like go through
right,
like all the different
Mhm.
sunrises from like 1978 Superman, which we did here, to like, the early black and white, like Nosferatu movie. And
right, right.
that was very cool.
Yeah, I think that was
Yeah,
pretty
that's so
poignant.
cool.
Also funny to put Superman in there. I was reading about Seinfeld and like Seinfeld, Superman's mentioned like in over 100 episodes of Seinfeld or something like that.
Mm.
Crazy.
Oh,
Superman
wow.
is crazy. That's why he's our longest episode because it's insane. I guess we did a two-part Batman, but Batman's crazy too. But vampires are also crazy, and
Yeah.
Batman's kind of a vampire also. So,
Mhm.
Sure. It's
um,
it's interesting as its own genre that has like its own rules, and you can like comment on them or subvert them and so on and so forth.
and the show is also
Totally.
great. Oh, also the show and this they subvert so many vampire tropes. They're like crosses. I don't care about crosses. Garlic.
Yeah.
What's the big deal about garlic?
Yeah.
You know, they're like, well, we do need coffins, though that's real, and sunlight will kill us, and we drink blood. Those things are real, but some of the other things are y'all crazy for them.
Y'all are making up stuff,
It's
but
like white people don't like spices, so that means we don't like garlic. Get out of here.
Why I last thing I'll bring up is Neil Jordan. He did another vampire movie. For those who are into vampire movies and into this movie upon watching, he did another one called Byzantium. I think it's in 2012 or 2013, around that time period. Another kind of very different take on vampires. I think it's another good one if you like this movie.
oh, okay. Definitely check
Noted.
that out.
Sure.
Let's get into casting. It's time to cast. It's time to cast. It's time to cast. I took an interesting approach on this one. I took a page out of Brandon's book and was like, okay, maybe it's 1994, and I'm gonna
Oh,
cast it from that point of view because this kind of star power just doesn't exist. It is hard to cast this as like a one-to-one
mhm.
now. I found I was like, these people aren't. This isn't no Brad Pitt. You're not a Tom Cruise. You're a fine young actor, but
Right, right.
and not even that these guys won't be legends. These guys now, but those guys were legends when this movie was made. Like, look at the
Yeah.
IMDb's. Like, it's crazy what stardom how stardom grew then versus how it does now.
Totally.
So I said I'm gonna do a 1994 casting. So that's the direction I went.
Okay. Okay. I definitely went modern with it.
I can't wait for where you squeeze some of our favorites into this one.
We're gonna make it work. We're gonna fit it in.
Let's start at the top. Let's start at the top because there's really only a few casting. Oh, and in the TV show, Christian Slater is not the reporter, but it is the same reporter from the movie. Like,
Yeah.
in the TV show, they catch up almost 50 years later.
Oh,
Louis reaches out to the
interesting.
reporter and he's like, I actually want to meet again and like correct some details of the story. And the reporter's like, yeah, some of that stuff didn't check out and I didn't fact check it. And I feel like you lied to me. And Louis like, well, maybe I embellished a little, but also, what did he say? I can't remember exactly, but anyway, they want to clear the air and they want to reconnect.
Yeah, I feel like I don't think I've ever seen anybody specifically say it, but I feel like the caveat of the like the story premise of the show is that like the original novel was like their original interview back in the 70s, and
Yeah.
and now they're catching up 50 years later, like, hey, maybe I didn't tell you all the truth.
Yeah. And they're retconning a
Mm.
lot of things because Louis is black now
Yeah.
or Creole,
Yeah,
So,
it's
and
true.
like Bernard said earlier, it's the early 1900s and not
Right.
1790s. But the reason I brought it up because it's not Christian Slater. Why couldn't they get Christian Slater? He's still acting. They got Eric Bogosian, who I really like as an actor.
Mm-hmm.
Also,
Yeah,
I
he's
think he
great.
actually is. Yeah, he's actually great in this role too.
Mm-hmm.
But I just wondered if that was even a conversation, or if they were like, "We're doing everybody's new. Everybody's new. Forget it."
Yeah. I wonder. Yeah, I guess the AMC, they were probably trying to go, all right, let's go a bunch of new characters.
Yeah, since we're retelling the whole kind of thing anyway, and it's a
Hmm.
new thing. Okay, but I'm on board with it either way. Let's start with Lestat, the Tom Cruise.
Hmm.
Amon, you lead us off this time.
Okay, so we're going modern. We're going, let's get some good actors, or there's no one that can reach that star power. But
Right.
for Lestat, and we might have to coax him out of his hole, but we got to figure it out. We're putting Frank Ocean in there.
Yes.
The man
Yeah.
that has never acted a
Yeah.
second in his professional career.
Does not matter. Yes.
He's he's it. He's iconic.
In the
He's the
Amon
one.
cinematic universe, Frank
Hmm.
Ocean is a vampire,
Oh,
and
he's
Vince Staples is Iron Man.
that would be a dope Iron Man. He would be dope. And Frank Ocean would kill this. He is a vampire already. We just need to get the acting part down.
Just put it on camera. All right, let's do it.
I'm
It's gonna
with it.
sell. I'm with it.
Cool. What about y'all?
There you go.
Dens, man. Uncle Dens.
Ooh.
I went 94
Now
casting too.
you went 94.
I went 94
Okay.
casting. So yeah, I went Dens.
So I did the 94, and I said no Denzel. I
Okay.
put the restraint on because sometimes it's just easy. I was like, who else would it be? Star power? Like, who else would it be? All right, no Denzel. I got to go in a different direction. I went Terrence Howard.
Ooh, 94 Terrence.
Haha.
94, young, handsome. Not that he's not handsome. I don't,
Yeah, for sure.
not that he's not handsome now,
Right.
but young. Just go look up young Terrence Howard if you got a question. Question answer. Get on that search engine and check
Right.
it out. I don't even got to say nothing else.
Right, exactly. Look him up in Dead President. I don't know.
Look up Dead Presidents Terrence Howard. Look up 94 Terrence Howard. You'll see. He kind of looks vampirish. Louis, Brad Pitt, who you got in mind?
Right. So Brad Pitt's character, an observer who is a real actor. I'm going real actor on this one, opposite Frank. We got to throw in our boy, and he could be a great vampire, Ashton Sanders.
Oh,
Ashton Sanders he's from, of course, Moonlight and
Moonlight, Wu-Tang Saga,
Wu-Tang
television show.
Saga. Yeah.
Bunch of other things, really. He had a really busy couple of years after Moonlight. He just was in everything, man. Like,
Truly.
yeah, I like that. I like him as an actor. Good actor. Good choice.
That's a good pick. Yeah, good pick. just to take it back to a previous episode, I think last episode, and to earlier in the episode, it's a shame that our legends don't work together more often. So Louis Dupont du Lac is Don Cheadle, of course, bro.
Oh, nice, nice.
Ooh, yeah.
Young
Yeah.
Chins and young Don. That would be beautiful.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's just interesting because, like, obviously at this time, like, there's no movie like this that could have allowed Black men to have this sort of relationship. But I do think, like, in an alternate reality, what if we lived in the world where we had a movie with Denz and Don in '94 like this? I don't know.
So
Right.
I chose a legend that I don't think we maybe even used him. It's kind of maybe crazy. Will Smith,
Thought about Will.
young
Yeah.
94 Will playing opposite young. And remember, his first movie was 60 Degrees of Separation, where he was a homosexual.
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe not his first
right.
movie. He did that Made in America movie too. But he was like a con man
For sure.
in 6 Degrees.
Yeah, I was gonna say villainous take for sure.
A very intriguing role he did. So
Yeah.
young Terrence, young Will, making it happen.
Solid.
Can't lose. Clear eyes, full hearts.
Man, I was about to do a Terrence Howard impression of him playing that.
It's
Oh,
never.
Well, you
not
should have just done it.
expectation.
I can't. It's like
I'm a vampire, man. Something like that. I'm gonna suck your blood, man.
Who's the next character? We're gonna do
Let's do Kirsten Dunst, I think.
Yeah.
okay. Yeah. Kirsten Dunst, and I wonder if she's a little too old now. I'm thinking about casting Marsai Martin.
I mean, as far as I know, that's fine. She might be older, but it's hard to cast that. It's easier to cast in the '94 because they're adults now. It's like, who was the young actress?
True.
That's a hard.
Yeah,
Modern young kids is always going to be hard.
Yeah, like even Kirsten Dunst was like a discovery on this movie, right? Like they found that child actress, right? So
right.
Yeah, true.
I think she had done a couple things. She was in Hollywood, but she wasn't like in ET or something,
Right.
Right.
So Claudia, again, trying to shoot for that '94 time period. I'm just choosing I'm going all heavy hitters. Journey Smollett.
Ooh.
Yeah. I went with her East Bayou co-star Megan Good.
Even better. Or maybe equal.
Journey Smollett was a child actor?
Yeah. You got to watch Eve's Bayou, man. Eve's Bayou.
Even younger than that, she was on Step by Step.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I also thought about Tia Tamara.
Oh, yeah.
One of them.
Damn, I didn't even think about them. Yeah.
But I went Megan Good. Or Tatiana Ali from Fresh Prince. Probably. She might have even been younger even at the time.
For sure.
Do you have Antonio Banderas?
Antonio Banderas, yes. So of course, being modern, and you can't find that Antonio Banderas kind of flow. But I went with a European who's got swag. Friend of the pod, not friend of the pod, but commonly casted in the pod. Reggie Jean Page.
Yeah. Now, I'm not sure if it's Reggie or Roger.
You're probably right. It's Roger. That sounds French enough. Let's go Roger.
Roger Jean Page.
Jean Page. Yes.
I love it. I love it.
Also, like
you're butchering French pronunciations this entire episode.
The casting of the movie, the casting of the TV show, I also like submit to that. That's great casting too.
Great
These aren't like name people. I don't know what else they've been in, but they're doing a great job on the show. I just wanted to shout that out one last time. But who you got for Antonio?
For sure. And also I will say we only watched the pilot. I've seen the full season. The young actress that they get to play Claudia is probably like more Marsai Martin's age, but that young actress kills it. Great job. Armand Delroy Lindo.
I'm going with young Cuba.
Young
Cuba Gooding Jr.
I like that. That's good.
And then maybe the reporter.
Ooh.
The Christian Slater reporter.
Oh yeah, the reporter. I'm going with Mahershala. Throw him in
Can't
there.
can't lose with Mahershala. You have
Mm,
that B, or do you want to
I
throw somebody?
didn't, but I'm gonna pick off the fly. Blair Underwood.
I don't know if it gets better than that. I'm gonna go Marvin Van Peebles.
Ooh, good one.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Marvin. Marvin or Melvin? Which one was the younger one?
The younger one is Mario.
No, the not the
Oh,
youngest ever. The one Melvin was the '70s blaxploitation
yeah,
director.
yeah,
Marvin
yeah.
was the '90s director and actor.
Oh, okay.
Mario is the one. Should be the one now. No, Mario and Melvin are twins. You know what? I don't know this family like
It's
that.
okay, man. we don't have to solve it right now.
Mario Van People. You're right. You're right. But who's Marvin? Is there a Marvin? There is
I
no
don't know,
Marvin. I made
man.
that up. I got Mario. I got Mario and Melvin, and I
Yeah.
created Marvin.
You
It
smushed them
is.
together.
It's funny though, because I definitely thought of Mario Van Peebles as like as I was like kicking around people to be Louis,
Yeah,
just because he was from that era, you know.
yeah,
Oh
definitely,
yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. I think
Uh,
all these casts would be incredible.
there's a Mandela Van Peoples
Oh,
Whoa.
who was born in '94, who's our Van Peoples.
the Van Peebles for this era.
He's a new Van Peoples.
Yeah,
That's all I
Nice.
got. You guys got any other casting you want to throw out there? Just so you can just list it off if you got it.
I just did the second like Armand Antonio Banderas like second in command dude.
Yeah.
All
Um,
right.
I just picked Kim Wayans. I just thought
Oh,
like
that'd be hilarious.
Oh,
you
that's
know
fun.
he
Hmm.
has like he does like a lot of like clowning and like
Yeah,
mime work, and I thought she might be good for that.
man, that'd be incredible.
Yeah, that
Her
is
as a
that's pretty dope.
vampire, I feel like she'd be so unleashed. I feel
Yeah,
like that would have been perfect for her. She should have been.
you know what I'm saying? And like he's like a bad dude, so I'd love to see her like just take a real heavy turn, you know?
Yeah,
Oh yeah, totally. Oh, that's fun. That whole little scene where he's climbing up the walls.
right.
Very,
I was
very
like,
cool.
oh, Christopher Nolan stole it from this. I'm like, nothing's original. This is
Um,
It broke you a little bit.
we're not going
truly.
to get into all of it, but there's also just a more extensive history of black vampires, like Vampire in Brooklyn, and
Mhm.
what's the other black vampire movie?
What is it? Blackula is a classic.
Blackula,
It's a
Blade,
classic,
of course. So
of course.
there'll be a future time to talk about that. Any final thoughts? We've done the casting now, and wrap it up here.
I, I like let's bottom line it.
Yeah,
Good,
that's
you
bottom
guys
line.
enjoyed it, or like just good, bad, and different as two people who had never seen it before.
Yeah, enjoyed it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I enjoyed it.
Cool.
I'm enjoyed it, and I loved it as a teaser for the series because I feel like there's so much story. And back in '94, people weren't looking to TV as long form like storytelling. They're like, fit it all in a movie. So
Yeah.
I'm excited for
There's
that.
there's an allegory in this movie. It's there in the movie of an abusive relationship, and just having the time in the series to like really tease that out, it becomes clear.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
Also, just a quick black note again. Most of the women that they bit in this movie were black.
Whoa.
The horrors in the beginning, Danny
Mhm.
Newton as the maid. When they had like their little fake threesome later, the black woman went first. Like most of these were
Yeah.
like light skinned black women and I looked them up and they all almost I think they've all still had like pretty long careers in the industry
Mm.
too. So shout out to them. Indra Ove, Belina Logan. I said Danny Newton a couple times, so we
Mhm.
know she's a huge star. So anyway, we really
Yeah.
really enjoyed the interview. It was a different kind of movie than was expected, but very well done. Star power out the yin yang.
Truly.
Like,
Truly.
And shout out to the show, which is also very, very intriguing. Can't wait to get into that more. And can't wait for the strike to end so they can make more seasons. It's a great setup for the show. So
Yeah.
hope they can get through as many books as they want to. Like, just do it, man. People want to see this. Anne Rice
Hmm.
is a legend.
for sure. Huge
It,
universe.
we're definitely noticing how many like female legends just aren't getting the blank checks they deserve. We talked about that before too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So
Yeah, yeah, dope movie. Right before you said that, Aaron, I was about to compliment the movie for not just feeding on slaves, but then you mentioned that fact about them taking all these black women out, and now I'm like, okay, never mind.
It was still
They
1994.
still not.
That's
We'll
how they
give it
did
to them.
diversity then. Like, let's make the victims black.
Right. What are the most non-speaking roles that we
Yeah. We want to see some boobs and let's see some
Mhm.
black. Okay, here we go. That's what it is. Um, well, we're gonna sign off and we'll see you guys next week. Dot dot dot. Hunger.
dot
The
dot
hunger
dot
for the
hunger.
podcast.
Hunger for the podcast. Hunger for
Hunger.
Yeah.
the horror. This is gonna be
Um,
a month of horror
the
movies.
horror Halloween
Hmm.
podcast. White movies. We're just rambling here. We're gonna wrap it up. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye, everybody.
Peace.